Hello and welcome to another episode of the GreenShift podcast. As I always say, this podcast is where we sit down with people that are actually building and financing Kenya's move towards a sustainable economy. And of course, just a quick heads up, before we get going. So this episode is part of I was just telling you, Charles, offline. It's part of our road to GreenShift, and we're just building momentum to our GreenShift forum in October, which of course we're excited to have Absa as part of that forum. So if this is a conversation, that gets you thinking, I think this episode is, what you need to listen to. So, of course, today we're going to dig into Absa's Kenya's brand new 2025 sustainability report that was launched. It was on Tuesday.
Yeah, on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. And of course, we're talking about climate finance, solar, which I saw Absa really going big into, and who's actually getting the money that Absa is sending out in terms of sustainable financing, and of course where the bank goes next now that you are retiring your all 13-year-old sustainability, commitment for a new 2020-30 targets. So welcome to the podcast, Charles.
No, thanks for having me, and it's good to be. I think it's my first time on GreenShift. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and really looking forward to the conversation now and to the conversation as we get into the conference. For us, it's usually always exciting to go out there and then talk to our stakeholders and share what is in our mind, and also hear from them. Yeah, so really looking forward to it.
Oh, good. So my first question. So, this is your second report that is being done, against the new RFS, and S2 standard that we've seen, even the NS really pushing. Now that you've been through it twice, what do you actually do different this year with this new report?
Yeah, so couple of things. First of all, this is the fourth report, sustainability report we are taking out to the market. You're right in the adoption of IFRS S1 and S2 standards, which are reporting requirements. The mandatory, the mandatory reporting time, reporting period with IFRS S1 and S2 is still coming. But of coming year, which then talks to typically reports from next year, which will be reported in 2028. But being Absa and an institution that cares a lot about governance and the milestones that we can cover within this space, we challenged ourselves to begin in what people call early adoption. To just start to understand it, to try it out, see what it is that we can learn within the processes, so that by the time it's compliance date, we are ready for it. What's different with our report this year? I think the first big point of difference is that it's coming at the end of a strategic cycle. We want to be doing our sustainability strategy cycles in 5 years. So we're just coming off a cycle that started in 21 to 2025, which is what are the 13 commitments that you're talking about. And with having achieved most, if not all, of the objectives that we had within that strategic cycle, then now we are rolling into the second strategic cycle, which we're calling Horizon 2030, enabling progress and scaling impact. And so this report covers not just 2025, but it may give you a bit of insight into what we've been up to in those last 5 years. And I think the main difference is when you begin to talk about money, and money that's gone into the things that we are doing ourselves and the things that we are doing, with our clients. So I think the main differentiator now, and as we continue adopting S1 and S2, is really this concept of following the money, so that you can see, where the real change is happening. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned money, because going through the report, I noticed, so 25 billion in 2022, that is climate finance. Then, of course, down to 22 billion in 2023, then a big drop, just 4 billion in 2024, and now back up to 6.5, this year. What actually happened in 2024? Was that a deliberate pullback by the bank, or a direct pipeline or something? Just something else entirely?
Yeah, so look, we are a financial institution, yeah, and one of our biggest roles within the sector is to really assess risk, and then work with our clients to help them to pursue the opportunities that they see in the market and in their growth strategies. And so, it's totally not uncommon, to find, shifts like those within a cycle. If you look at the overall at our overall balance sheet and you look at our overall loan book, you'll see it's continued growing over that period of time. What's with the reduction and increase? It's really commensurate to appetite. To an appetite here, I mean appetite from our customers. As we just said, this is a green space, so to speak. In that many clients are still, learning what it is. Many clients are still warming up, to these types of funding, and so, for us, where we focus our energy towards is really to enlist as many of our clients as we can, for them to see sustainable finance, and the specific case that you speak to, climate and green finance, as an investment towards more efficient operations, which then typically would leave you with a bit of headroom, when you look at your cost and your revenue, and therefore you are able to make more money. So, it makes a business, it makes business sense, and it's the absolutely right thing to do. And our focus is solely on bringing more and more customers into the fold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So, just something else I noticed in the report, climate financing is only around 28% of everything, that, the bank has booked as sustainable finance since 2022, right? Yep. The rest looks like, mostly, financial inclusion lending, I'll call it that way.
Correct, yeah.
So is sustainable finance doing a bit of double duty here, counting things that are only about inclusion as if, they're climate related?
Look, so absolutely not. So we don't count them as though they are climate related. Yeah. So and that's why we go. And if you go into the report, you'll see very clear demarcation of this amount went to this amount went to this, and the portion that goes to climate is very clearly called out. Why we do that is because in these cycles of reporting, it's easy for people to mix up things. Yeah, and we are quite intentional in ensuring that what we are saying to the market is transparent and backed by evidence. One of the commitments we've actually done is that made is that from next year our reports would be independently assured, which is a really big jump, and a big step towards enhancing that transparency that we espouse as an organization. But coming back to your question, so conventionally sustainable finance typically include these two areas. Yeah, so sustainable finance, by definition, it includes inclusive finance, which is the amount of money that goes towards either totally unserved or underserved segments of the economy. For us in this country, that would be things like SMEs, which we all know the importance of SME in the economy. Highest job creators, very significant contribution to the country's GDP. And yet, as significant and as important that sector continues to be grossly underserved in terms of access to sustainable finance, yeah, or access to finance in a way that's sustainable for them, yeah, and so we made a deliberate effort here within our business banking unit, to build out a fully fledged SME unit, that whose everyday focus is to say, how do we ensure that we are deepening access, to finance for these guys? I think another very, very important thing to mention is that access, yes, is a problem, but it's not is not in the literal sense of whether these people can access a financial institution or money systems. Yeah, it's really what they are able to take out. Yeah, that can contribute to the growth of the enterprises that they are building. Yeah. And what our practice has also showed us is that the bigger challenge actually that SMEs face isn't really access to financial support. Yeah, the non-financial bit of capacity building therefore becomes an extremely important thing. Yeah, what I mean is that there are many enterprises that take out facilities from different places. Yeah. And when they take out these facilities, they end up stifling their growth, because now everything you're making is going towards paying this debt. So it can be unsustainable, and it can actually lead you to the death of the enterprise. And so these interventions around how to manage your books, how to grow your revenues, how to grow your business become very important, so that when you're now then ready, we can give you this financial assistance. So it's things like those that we've been doing. It's about women, entrepreneurs who have face very structural challenges, from accessing finance. I'm sure you're aware of the statistics around title deeds, which is the most commonly used, collateral for financial institutions in this country. And yet, they say only about 10% of title deeds in this country are registered to women. Yeah, so that's a structural challenge. And so you have to ask yourself as a business, how do we support this unit, or this segment of people that are still doing good for our economy, but have been barred from accessing the right systems. And so a lot of work has gone towards that space. But that doesn't take away from the climate work, and climate work, is basically focused on kind of 4 sectors. We talk about renewable energy. We talk about energy efficiencies, which is about in many cases updating your equipment of your tools of production. If you're a household, the kind of gadgets and utilities that you have in your home to more energy efficient items. We also talk about climate smart agriculture, where we are working with different farmer groups across the country, with agro processors and stuff like that. There's a lot of effort around post-harvest loss reduction and stuff like that. And finally is around green buildings and responsible construction, where we are working with the KGBS, to really help our customers to appreciate this as an option of a more efficient home that would actually cost you much less money to run. Yeah, so it's not a mistake when you talk about sustainable finance. Is all of this, and it's because all of them respond to social, economic, and environmental challenges that we continue to face.
Okay.
Yeah,
and also there's a number now I picked from the report. There's a separate 13 billion shillings. The climate finance target tied to the multilateral investment guarantee agency.
Yeah.
Agreement that you signed, just a couple of months ago. Yeah. How does that connect now to the 6.5 billion you disbursed this year? Yeah. In that 13 billion of the 2026, goal, or are we talking further out than that?
Yeah, so it's a guarantee. Yeah, and so if you understand the way a guarantee works, it says that if you're channeling out finances that are within the sectors that are very clearly defined by MIGA, yeah, that they can give you a guarantee of up to the amount that you've mentioned. And so what it helps us with is to give us a bit more boldness as we assess clients, and clients' needs for finances. It's been a very helpful tool for us, in just helping us, expand our appetite around that space, and one that will continue to be a critical one, as we look into the future. So you would have seen one of the commitments we made in our new strategic horizon is to grow this sustainable finance portfolio to be 30% of our entire portfolio by about 2030. Yeah, and then there's an asterisk under there that talks about 10% of our total portfolio being eligible as climate finance. So eligibility is another very complex process that is guided by global standards on what actually really ultimately qualifies as green and climate finance. And so these targets, we are only able to make them because we've got the likes of MEGA guarantee in place, and then we have got other partners we are working with, the likes of IFC, and so far and so forth, that we are working with to ensure that we can continue growing our appetite within this space. And it's not really about us. This is about this is about clients. It's about clients who can see the benefit, the functional, operational, and financial benefit of going green. And it's about us, then pulling together all the resources that are at our disposal to ensure that when that need is there, we can stand behind them and support them financially in the right way. And so MEGA becomes an important, a very important aspect in from that perspective.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, because of time, I certainly just focus the podcast on the financing bit. But even just, as looking ahead. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, so you are retiring your 13 commitments that you set back in 2020, and now replacing them with 4 strategic priorities, and new 2030 targets, right? What did the old, let me frame this way, what did the old framework get wrong, or did it just outgrow itself?
No, look, it's much more evolution than it is replacement. And so if you had a goal that you set 5 years ago, you would imagine that you're either meeting it or you're missing it. And that should inform your posture as you look forward. So as I said, we set up a 5-year strategy, that ran from 21 to 2025. It's a strategy that builds off SDGs, the SDGs framework, and of the conventional pillars of environmental, social, and governance. And on top of this, we stacked now these 13 commitments that cut across environmental responsibility, social economic responsibility, governance responsibility, and we included another one there that's about public advocacy, and which is about bringing in a lot more people into this conversation, clients, competitors, government, etc., so that we can make progress against these commitments. We've executed very diligently against each of those commitments. We are satisfied, and the board of Absa is very satisfied with the progress that we made there. And so at the end of the 5 years, we felt it is time for us to embark on a new, on an improved journey, or a new phase of growth. And so, one of the things we did on Tuesday is to launch our next 5-year strategy, which we're calling Horizon 2030, which is about enabling progress and scaling impact. And so, one of the learnings that we had is 13 felt like a lot, a lot of things to keep track of, to report on, and to give our stakeholders the depth that they need from a transparency perspective. And so we made a conscious decision to say 4, sounds like the right number. If you double click each of them, then it goes into very specific measures and milestones that will run us to 2030. So what the execution of the 13 commitments did for us is to set a very solid foundation, that now allows us to launch into the future, with boldness and with proof that it can be done, and it also makes business sense for us and for our clients. So as we look into the future, we are tracking literally 4 things. Sustainable finance, including inclusive finance and climate finance, very big, and the majority of our effort will go there. We are tracking our decarbonization efforts towards achieving a net zero status by 2050, and there is a specific goal there that we set to cut our operational emissions, those ones that come out of our own operations, to cut them by half by 2030. And there are now initiatives that are driving things like that. One of them is a commitment to solarize all our branches by 2030. It's a big investment. It's work that requires a lot of resources. but we've got the backing of the board, the backing of our finance teams or the management team to say that this is the right thing to do. And it also makes sense because it cuts the cost of the cost of operations. Then the third one is really around governance, and ensuring that we continue guarding and growing the trust that is bestowed on us by our customers and our stakeholders, and that's by ensuring that that we are doing the right thing. We have the right internal policies, standards, systems, processes to ensure that business is done the right way, but also that the emerging regulations from local and global regulators around this space, that we are really preparing and are ready to meet them. That's why we are front loading our S1 and S2 compliance. And then finally is really around building a broader culture around sustainability. Yeah, and we start with our colleagues in their roles, in their homes, in their home environment, in their individual lives, and it flows to our customers. And there's a lot of training and education and awareness that's to be done. One of the things we will do under this pillar is to set up a sustainable finance academy that's open to our colleagues and our customers, where we now just work with different partners. Strathmore would be one of them, IFC would be another one, to provide structured trainings for people who want to understand. So what is sustainability? Is it beneficial? How can I embed it in my home? How can I embed it in my business? What gains would I get? What does the reporting mean? How should I read these things, and so far and so forth. So it's an exciting journey. I've got a group of very passionate colleagues that have worked very hard, to put this together. And what's more exciting is the 3,000 of Absa colleagues that stand behind it to execute it. And much more exciting is the kind of curiosity and excitement we're seeing with our customers and clients to say, we want to go there, how can you help us get there?
Right.
Yeah.
I wish we had time to talk about the solarizing part, because it's also one of the things I found interesting in the report. But of course, we're going to, during the forum, we'll have a live podcast session.
Absolutely.
So we'll actually talk about those things during
Happy
that time.
to.
Yes. But I think, we are sitting here, let's say 5 years, to come. The targets you mentioned.
Yeah.
Which one are you more nervous about hitting?
Which one are we more nervous about? Yes. I wouldn't say nervous, but I would say which one am I excited about? And I'm excited about it because it has the potential to make the biggest impact, and that's the one around financing. And why that's the case is because that's our bread and butter. Yeah. And also because financial institution, in the topic of sustainability, financial institutions sit at a very, shall I say, strategic place, where you can penalize bad behavior and you can reward good behavior. And so, we are excited to use the financial instruments at our disposal, and the capital that we have, to encourage more and more clients, big, small, big corporates, small and medium enterprises, individuals like yourselves, to really think about, living your life sustainably, running your home sustainably, running your businesses sustainably. And that in itself allows us then to channel more capital towards you. And why that's good is because it's also a business opportunity for Absa. Sustainability only makes sense if it's profitable. Yeah. And so, we see a big opportunity to also grow our balance sheet from that perspective. But I think the benefit is that we can grow our balance sheet while, encouraging a lot more good business practice and sustainable business practice from our clients.
Thanks so much, Charles, for joining us on the GreenShift.
Anytime, I'm happy to.
Yes, and of course, for everyone listening to this podcast, as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, and Absa is a confront partner for a GreenShift Forum happening this October 22nd here in Nairobi, Kenya. And of course, if today's numbers, Charles was talking about on climate, of course, finance, green lending, got you thinking, we have a green finance and carbon markets track that will be part of actually the discussion. And also we've got tracks on ESG, ESG as a competitive advantage. We have renewable energy, we have public-private partnership, and of course the circular economy. And of course, before the main event, we're running actually a prevent mixer. We're calling it the Road to GreenShift or GreenShift Countdown, happening actually towards the end of next month, where again, a good chance to meet a lot of people you'll keep hearing from between now and October on the podcast and even at the forum. Of course, tickets are down in the description section of this section. My name is Nick Kanali. I'll see you in the next episode of the GreenShift podcast.